Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. Today we'll be talking about the path to succeed, to receive internal happiness. So many of us have been through so many trauma pain as a child growing up. We've been through, verbal abuse, probably by our parents saying we're not good enough, or our friends saying that we don't deserve this, whatever entitlement we think we have that we don't deserve. So we felt internal pain within ourselves. But on this path to life, there's something called where you have to realize you have to find your joy. My guest will just be telling us how she did this. Angie Gallagher will be telling us about her own journey and how she found her own inner peace and now help others to achieve their inner happiness. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Angie is an entrepreneur, former professional photographer, and a happiness evangelist. Her creative work is exhibited and published internationally. She has photographed many prominent figures at their private parties, including Nancy Pelosi's and other legacy families. As a child, Angie struggled with a Thai mother. She overcame the statistic and now helps people recognize that the path to succeed is to embrace inner happiness. She has a Bachelor of Fine Art degree in photography from Ohio University and a Master in Fine Arts in Photography and Digital Media from Arizona State University. She's also a fellow at New York University National Graduate Seminar. She holds a certificate in entrepreneurship from the School of Business at the University of Colorado, Denver. I am excited to talk to Angie also about how do we, in everything we've gone through, how do we help our colleagues find their own internal happiness? Because it's not just always about us. Happiness is something you want to spread around to others. Meet my amazing guest, Angie, as we discuss this amazing, enjoyable topic, internal happiness and finding your joy. Meet Angie. Well, hello again, everyone, and welcome to Painless Universe, a conversation with myself and Welsh. As I said in my introduction, Angie, I think all of you must be excited because you were thinking about your own path to inner happiness. Can that be achieved? Is it really possible? We always ask ourselves that question. Well, my guest today will be telling you about her own journey and how she's found her own inner happiness along the way. Angie, thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm here with you.
Absolutely. And I'm doing great. I'm really excited. And where are you joining me from today?
Denver, Colorado.
That's lovely. That's lovely. Well, welcome to London by Zoom. Yeah. So, I read your story, your bio. You said you talked a lot about your childhood growing up and how that influenced you and shaped you. In a few simple words, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Who is Angie?
Sure. So I grew up in a rural area of Ohio, and my mother is from Thailand. My parents met in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. And so I didn't really get to know my Thai family growing up, but my father's family is what I refer to as Appalachian hillbilly with all love and kindness. It's a very rich culture. And most of my family is from West Virginia. There's strong roots there. And my grandfather is a Baptist, or was, he's gone now, a mountain Baptist preacher. So I grew up watching river baptisms, right? And things like that. So it was a very interesting country upbringing.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, my mother's family was generations of Buddhist monks.
Mm.
And so today, that is from the spiritual standpoint, I read a lot about Buddhism and consider myself Buddhist. So that basically was my upbringing. I'm the first person to go to college on my father's side and then continued on to get a master's. And I was in the creative arts, so I had a photography studio of my own. And I did that to raise my kids, allowed me a lot of flexibility. But that's up to the professional part in a nutshell.
But you did well though. You said you went as far as to photographing someone such as Nancy Pelosi, and like
That's
so
right.
you were quite busy. You really you were well known for you to get that invitation to do their photo work. How hard did you have to work to really get recognized? Because one of the things I know is that photography, people think it's just so easy, but to get recognized, that people actually start calling you out to say, okay, I want you to be the one to do my family portraits. Not very easy. How hard did you have to work to get to that
Yeah.
stage?
I think kindness goes a long way, but being proactive, answering, replying promptly. And the other thing is coming from the other side of the tracks, let's say, from the holler in a rural area, and then getting clients like the Walton family or working with Pelosi and other very prominent business families, that my celebration of their success inside of me
Mm,
helps me remain genuine and see them as a person, and not see them as a person with money, not see them as a person with um so far, so different from me. As
mm,
long as I could maintain being true to listening to who what they were saying versus just racing in my mind of the house that they are living in, because often, like with the Waltons, I'd be at their house, when we were doing portraits, and most of the portraits I did were on location. With Pelosi, it was her events, and they'd be at private homes throughout the Denver area. And as long as I always made sure that I saw them as a human being first.
I will say that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think, people liked working with me because, I try to stay very true to who they are. And I think, it's that connection. You feel connected.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love what you just said. I see them first as a human being. I think sometimes we humans, we forget that is the key thing that brings us all together. It's just that we're human beings. And once we always remember that, there's always that connection. It doesn't matter who the person is. It doesn't matter, what race, what ethnicity, what
Right.
gender, what religion, it doesn't matter, because we're all human beings, and that's the biggest connection we have before anything
Yeah.
else, before we start
Yeah.
separating ourselves to different parts and pieces. What inspires me about yourself, Angie, is your childhood. And you said, when I was a kid, I was immensely embarrassed about our shortage of money. I
Yeah.
felt inadequate. What impact did this have on you, this shortage of money as a kid?
Yeah. A lot of shame, a lot of embarrassment, a lot of work hiding. You know, if
Mm,
we went into the grocery store with my mom, we lived in a small town. I would be always looking around. I didn't want anyone seeing us because my mom was using food stamps. She was a single mom, putting her way, putting herself through college. Now she's a nurse,
mm,
and she worked really hard and has come out on the other side. She's really lifted the family up with her accomplishments, especially when she started investing in real estate. And so it was just full of shame and embarrassment. And when you have that, you do a lot of work to avoid shame and embarrassment.
And that did teach you a lot of things. You said, growing up poor, I learned a lot. You learned new skills, certain skills that someone else might not think about it as a skill. You learned those certain skills. What were some of the skills you picked up along the way from from growing up poor?
Yeah. I feel that one of there's a book, Pollyanna. I would kind of jokingly tell people I was the biracial Pollyanna, right? Always seeing the silver lining, always seeing the good out of anything, including being poor. What were the good things out of that journey, aside from, the hardships of it? So there was definitely a point in my life where I was very negative, critical. And I think that's just a natural part a natural path that some of us take, and then we learn from that, and we spin out of it, and we become more aware of our thoughts, right? With our thoughts lead to words, and our words lead to actions, right? Actions lead to habits. And probably the biggest thing from, that time in my life that I took from it was, never lose the lesson, and just accept, that probably came later, accepting it. And then I was no longer ashamed to talk about it.
Oh. So anyone going through a difficult time, one of the things you probably say to them is accept where you are today, and then you won't be too ashamed to talk about it. And then, because a piece of, for example, some people might be going through a terrible time, such as divorce, and one of
Right.
the things they find difficult is to tell people about it because they want to know what society will tell them. In your opinion, from growing up poor, what advice would you give someone who's going through a difficult time on what skills they should learn on how to accept that what they're going through at the moment?
Yeah. Well, definitely the first part is accepting. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to feel down, and it's okay to feel hopeless. And then as soon as you embrace that, then understand there are so many inspiring stories out there. People can come out on the other side. That is absolutely possible. There's nothing impossible about that. It's absolutely possible. So then when they're ready, they can get to a point. I feel what was most helpful when I started being aware of my thoughts, how I saw myself, my relationship to money. Money has so much to do with where we want to go in our careers, how we want to provide for our families. And when my relationship to money turned around, that's when I noticed my thoughts, how I thought about myself, and what I can do, what I cannot do. And as cliche as it may sound, anything is possible. It is so true. I mean, and so, and I think also for, that acceptance of, it's okay to be sad, it's okay to feel hopeless, to also accept you're going to feel lonely,
Yes.
and that you are truly not alone,
Yeah,
you
there
know.
are people out there always. I think once you accept it, then you're able to talk as well. And there are people out there that will be willing to listen and be with you during that difficult time and also help you during that time. You grew up with a time mother, and that gave you, as a young age, because of the difference, the way they bring up kids, they can be very strict. You said your mom made you feel dumb because of the way she probably had expectation of you. And I won't just put it on the Thai mother. I think it goes back to many in the African mothers as well. The way they know to raise their children is that they
Mhm.
say certain words to them. They voice it out very vocally, and you're like, did you really mean what you just said? And but you grew up, but in with that brought you very hurtful feelings, knowing that you were going through this deep pain of what your mother was telling you. What feelings did this bring from growing up with your mother when she was telling you these hurtful things, and how did you find the joy in overcoming that those conversations about what she was saying?
Yeah, the one thing that is emblazed in my brain
Yeah.
is don't feel sorry for yourself. Right? And I just remember her I mean, I must have been, kind of complaining or this or that or but this. I'm a teenager, and then it was just don't feel sorry for yourself, and I can't tell you how many times. And then sometimes it was so abrupt, I would just be like, oh, and then it sticks with you though.
Yeah.
And I would say that is a skill that my mother had taught me, was to feel no self pity. And when you have no self pity, I think that also helped me interact with people with, who have a very high net worth. I didn't sit there interacting with them with, oh my gosh, what I don't have and what they have, but if I were someone who had a lot of self pity, then you're comparing, like, oh, they have so much more, right? And it's just stuff is when it comes down to it. But the having no self-pity is definitely what my mother taught me.
No, I love that. I love that. I think everyone should take it. Whatever anyone gets away from this conversation, that is something everyone should try and take on, because it is true. We sometimes live in a world where we start self-pitying ourselves and self-doubting ourselves. That leads to so much different negativity around you, and your mind start playing games with you. And
Yeah,
I
it
love,
does.
yeah, I love that. It's really taught you that, because you said your mother hash word created a path for you to achieve peace from within, helping me discover happiness. And I love that, because you're a happiness evangelist, which you now teach. How did you overcome her painful words? I know you said it taught you not to be, but really, what did you really do? What path did you go on to help you overcome those harshful words, to make you realize that I know I can, you know what, mommy's always going to say this, but I can do it. I'm just going to Blaze, did you numb it out? What did you really do to help you overcome it?
And the what I did with that is, and this is part of the Buddhist philosophy, although I wouldn't say, I think for years I was Buddhist minded without really being Buddhist. And when she would tell me, don't feel so sorry for yourself, right? Don't have so much, which is basically don't have self-pity. The way that I kind of transitioned in order to embrace that lesson is really living in the present moment. And in the present moment, I feel that when we're thinking about the future. And then sometimes we're thinking about the past and we're ruminating on things that have never happened, will never happen. When you have these conversations in your head
Yeah.
about almost like a movie,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And so, in order to really instill the skill of not having any self pity, was basically thinking more forward and in the present and less in the past.
Wow.
So I think of it as 10, 80, 10. 80% of my mind needs to be in the present, here, today, right now.
Yeah.
If I'm in self pity mode, I might be 60% in the past,
Mm.
10%, right?
Yeah.
And then 30 in the future, worried about where I may or may not be.
Mm.
So with self-pity, when I really learned to stop ruminating about the past, what has and what has not, because you can't change that.
Yeah.
It's done.
It's done.
You can only move forward.
Yeah.
And so when I transitioned into, okay, I'm not going to be woe is me anymore, which to me is stuck in the past.
Mm.
I was like, all right, there's only forward. There's today, what I can do. I know where I want to go. And then what I do today impacts where I'm going to go.
Someone looking to get to their happy place as a happy evangelist, what would you describe as a happy place? Where is your goal? What is your expectation of what a happy place is? What do you teach?
Yeah. I love the phrase know thyself.
No,
And
that.
the more you know who you are, you know what you want, right? And then I always say work with the willing. Don't try and convince people of where, try and being in the same place that you are. You work with the people who support you, the people who wholeheartedly believe, in what you're doing, versus trying to convince people who are not on board, right? So when you know who you are and you know what you want, you're much closer to that happiness place because you're truer to yourself. And you'll just keep attracting people that are on the same path and believe in the same things.
Yeah, that's true. Because I think we sometimes want something and we keep going to that wrong direction, and keep even that, and that person's not giving us that any attention. Like, even it could be a job and you keep applying, and sometimes you just have to realize, know your worth, and know when to just let go and move on to other better, bigger and better things, which you might have be avoiding because you're just chasing this one thing. So I love that. Know
Hmm.
your worth. Have you been able to push yourself and not get caught up with what others think about you? because we live in a world with social media, social pressure, all kinds of things, and so many people have this opinion. Have you been able to avoid that, and how did you deal with that?
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up with the numbers, right? You're on social media and it's how many followers, how many likes, how many comments. And I think again, when you can stay true to a process that so for example on LinkedIn, I got like 20,000 followers in like 10 months. So that's the one area that I'd push a lot on, but I had friends that had 500,000 followers, 200,000 followers. And when I could again anchor myself in the present, right? And I loved and appreciated the conversation I was having and the people that I was engaged with versus being worried about I need to get to 50,000 followers or 60,000 followers like so and so, right? And it's that comparing, which kind of trickles into self pity, right?
Yes.
Woe is me, I don't have as many followers. But when you can celebrate other people's success, like yours, you have an amazing following on Instagram, it's like, wow, good for her. And when you can kind of celebrate other people's successes,
Yeah.
you're definitely in a much happier place.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can sing to that as well. It's learning, and especially the women as well. I think I don't know if you would think the same. Do you think this should apply to more women as well? Because I think women tend to be one of our blockers in success. We tend to
Yeah.
put ourselves down. What advice would you give to women, especially in social and in building our confidence? What advices would you say?
hmm it all goes back to know thyself. The more you're comfortable with who you are and accepting who you are, then you know what you want, and the other stuff just doesn't matter. Then comparing to other people just doesn't matter. How many likes you get doesn't matter. And in that game of social media, the low numbers are good because it tells you what your audience doesn't like so much from you. But when you get the higher engagement, and then it's also timing of the post, but your audience will tell you what they love from you. And in some ways they help you get truer to who you are.
Yes, yeah, yeah. There, when you start listening and understanding that the way they're responding and what they're saying, that really gives you good feedback.
Yeah.
You did a lovely post on LinkedIn. You said, growing up in poverty, now you emphasize with colleagues seeking jobs. This is a crucial time. The pandemic has caused so many people to lose their jobs, and now they're seeking. And you gave
Yeah.
a good advice to everybody. You said, guys, if you know of anyone who's seeking a job, try and do your best. See what you can do. Don't ignore that message. Why did you think it was so important to leave that kind of message out there for other people to help your colleagues who are in desperate need for jobs at the moment?
Right. It's just on social media, you'll get a lot of messages from people you don't know. And many of them are trying to do business of some kind. And some of them just kind of go about it in a strong way. They don't know any better, right?
Yeah.
And so people get very frustrated with, oh, I mean, I just get all these messages of these from these people. And it's like, well, they're human beings, and just take a look at their profile. This is a time where we really have to stand together. We're all in this pandemic together and the results of that. And if you can't see how the people in Africa or India are connected to you in the US,
Mm.
then you need to dig a little bit deeper on the empathy part and understand that this impacts you every day.
Yes. Yeah. And it's impacting everyone. You never know when you're on this round the corner, when you might actually be needing someone else to help you, because life has no guarantees. No one knows what tomorrow has around in store for them. My final question for you, Angie. Is it more important to be kind or to be honest? I saw your message. I have to ask her. Which is it?
Yeah.
I know what I went for, but I would love to know what you will go for.
Yeah, yeah. Today, my answer is kind. But if you were to ask me maybe 10 years ago, I would have said better to be honest. But I think kindness, it takes a lot of discipline. And sometimes the honesty that we want to share with someone, well, one, they may not want it, right? They didn't ask for the advice, right? And then two, they may not be in an emotional state to um, even hear, it.
Mm.
Kindness goes so much farther. When you're kind to someone, and let's say it's the same message, but you choose either from the kind framework or the honest framework. The kind framework, they are probably more likely to hear your message. There is always a way to spin it up in kindness,
Wow.
but it takes a lot of discipline.
Wow.
it's,
It
it's
takes a
harder.
well,
It's harder.
it's true, it is because sometimes you see something, but no, I love the answer because that was my answer as well. That was the path I was going for because I think in this current state of the world today,
Yeah.
honesty is very important, but at the same time, it's very, very important to be kind on the way you
Yeah.
respond to that honesty. So I love it. I totally
Mhm.
agree with it. Angie, I'm really happy I had this conversation with you. You're all about happiness, inner happiness, and I think anyone who's listening will be able to find their own inner happiness. It's not easily found, as you have
Yeah.
really demonstrated. It took you years to get to where you are today, but on your journey, you've shown us that it is possible. But there's certain things we need to tweak along the way to find our own inner happiness. I thank you so much for sharing that with me. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm very grateful to be here with you.
Thank you. I enjoyed every aspect of it. I really did.
Me
Thank
too.
you
Me
so
too.
much.